or a woman chained, you don't have them enslaved. It's when you can remove the chains, turn your back, go around the corner into the bathroom, and they stay right there waiting for you to come back. It's about an idea. And what we people who come from the other world, the so-called third world, but who are actually from the first world, have contested is the idea. We have always seen education as freedom. It is a mode of freedom. It is the first line of the struggle for liberation. And we have brought that kind of contestation, that objection to the imperialist notion of domination into the academy, to help to democratize it, to deracialize it. When they argue to us, as they used to say, all you do is write about Negro literature? Don't you write about literature sometime? I said, what do you read? But you get the point. Now it's within the discourse on music. There is Chopin and Tchaikovsky and whatever. Then there is what? World music. What is that? The Europeans are not in world music? No, because they are what? The world. And the rest get to this anonymous, reductive category called world music. Don't matter if you have 2 billion Chinese, your music is the other. You hear it on the stations. And there are people also, education is a struggle not only in power, but status. And sometimes the struggle can be so brutish because there's so little in the ultimate to be gained. But there is a struggle. We often experience people telling us, why are you doing that? Why are you taking that course? But you can take 15th century British theater, and nobody asks you why you're doing that. It never comes into discussion, right? And so there is that kind of opposition that is still there throughout this campus. And it's not because they're ill-informed. They are informed enough to know that it is a challenge of the thing upon which they have premised their own intellectual life. That's why Dr. Du Bois, in all his 90-some years, could not seize a position in a major university, even though he has been one of the master scholars of the 20th century. These things are not by accident. You all ought to understand that. The academy is a form of socialization of the intellect. It is not necessarily dedicated to liberating it. It's to shaping and constructing it. And so they understand us. Nathan Huggins said, professor who is now passed, that the master narrative of the United States is a deforming mirror of truth. Interesting essay. The master narrative is a deforming mirror of truth. But at the academy, you're supposed to allow for the interaction of ideas. So if we are so lesser, just part of the other, then let us stand, right, on the ground and we can exchange ideas. Don't try to undermine and reconstruct. But I want also to point out that we've often asked, if in fact these places are hospitable and open and cosmopolitan, and therefore the natural home, why is it that some of them are not much changed from when I first came here? They have one black professor at a time out of about 40, 45 people in the department. And we can go right around and name them, right? They have not changed. So how are we supposed to be hospitable? Well, how is that supposed to be supported for our work? These are the people in their mass, their numbers, will vote us down and vote us out. They're the ones who will say, we don't think this person should come in as a graduate student. We don't think this person's project is worthy because it's not what we do. It's not, because in one sense, academics want to reproduce themselves in the lives of the people that they teach, not necessarily to be challenged. So we've had to constantly, and lastly, the racist premise. And then let's deal with this, because I'm not just here flamboyantly, casting this about. But you see, oftentimes there's what? An assimilationist ethic applied to a so-called minority student. If you go to a reception, if you're invited to one of the big Christmas receptions, you're supposed to walk into that place, and if you see me and know me, you ain't supposed to act like you know me. You're not supposed to speak to me. Or if you know some of your colleagues, you're not supposed to gather with them. And they come and say, well, move around and let them know people. That you can be cosmopolitan by knowing more about what we know. But nobody ever instructs them to circulate and converse with what we are. So therefore, we're not to be the cosmopolitan. We're not the ones with what's to be offered. That's fundamental. And it carries over in the intellectual project as well. Even though they don't know something, they will contend that they have the right to evaluate it, to speak on it. If they don't know the tradition, then theirs is somehow to remove it, to diminish it more. And so that has been consistent from the beginning. It also involves what they consider to be the best outcomes. They hold that the 1960s was problematic for the academy because they brought the wrong kind of people. They brought these people with shades on from the inner city, from Chicago and from Detroit and from Newark and from New York and from Los Angeles and from Dallas and Houston and these places. They said these people are not easily assimilatable. And they come in and start raising questions and challenging. And so you look for yourself at the way the recruitment takes place today. So that's just to give you a flavor. And that's why their approach to us is adversarial. Not ours. We're not going to go in and talk to them. We're going to try to keep it undercover and go in and then order it, drop it on them. It's adversarial because the perception is that these people in some ways are going to raise questions that are intransient and intractable. And we don't want that. Interesting, at an academy, at the university.
Professor, do you want to? I just want to add something. Not along that line. Just to go back to the encounter we had yesterday. Mary said, but I want to re-emphasize it. Not simply the fact that we are the last people to hear about the plan, but arrogance, the absolute arrogance which attended the provost's presence. He was saying literally, I know what is better for you than you do. That's the only message we picked up. There was universal opposition and exactly what he was doing. And he said, it's a done deal. And you're going to be better off. That was what it was about. The insensitivity struck me like nothing else could. I could not believe that any right-thinking person, any sensitive person would be so insensitive and insulting. And it was a calculated insult. He mentioned resources. This was in the paper today. You get your PhD program, we threw money into it. Yesterday, Mr. Slice said, said, so you back us off. Dollars, $90. No. It's more resources. as if that is the issue. He was asked yesterday, Professor Harris said this very about the PhD program. We are ready.